Hey guys, before we get into the video, I just want to announce one little thing. There is a bit of an audio glitch in this one. It's not super noticeable, but it's noticeable. It's in the background. It seems to come and go throughout the video. Just wanted to give you a heads up with that one. Sorry. All right, here we go. Okay, recording. Everything's good. Just give me a second, guys. Just give me a second. I'm serious. Just hold on. Oh man, how am I gonna fit this in here? Okay, here we go. All right. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, am I right? Luffy never gave up. Get in there! Alright. Yeah! Alright. Cool. Alright. Tekking tumble! Oh yeah! I don't know if you can see. Okay, hold on. Let's do that again. Wait, let's do it again. Let's take the microphone out of the way. Alright, now we're good. Alright, now we're good. Okay. Tekking tumble! Oh! Alright, that was good. So for all the naysayers out there that were like, oh man, Tekking, I love your new studio, man, but there's no way you're going to be able to pull off a Tekking tumble in that room. Yeah, well, that's what the giant beanbag chair's for, I'll tell you. Okay, this was a special occasion, not just because I wanted to try that, but also because we are now ready to discuss. Are you ready for this? I've been waiting for this for a while. Gotta catch my breath. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Tekking101, and today we will be covering SBS 101. I should have set up like confetti or like streamers to come down when that happened. I was more worried about the beanbag chair, but it's okay. It's all right. And you know what? It almost seems perfect because we are starting off SBS number 101 with my favorite Straw Hat, Franky. Yeah, there's some other stuff in here about Zoro. Maybe you care about that, whatever. But come on, man. We started off with Franky. Oda finally draws Franky the same way he did with the other Straw Hats in the future. Okay, so the same thing we had with all those other characters. We have 2 sketches from a good future and then 2 sketches from a bad future. However, it's modified a little bit with Franky because I know despite how he acts, Franky is an adult. He's actually 36 years old right now in the story. So normally how Oda does these is he'll draw a character at age 40 in the good and bad timeline, then a character at age 60 in the good and bad timelines, okay? But since Franky's only 4 years away from being 40, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to draw him at age 40. I mean, you could, but I just don't think there's going to be any differences, major differences between then and now, okay? So instead, Oda draws Franky at age 50 and at age 70. That's right, we get Grandpa Franky. All right, so the first sketch from the good universe, here he is at age 50, and this is probably honestly my favorite one out of all 4, just because he looks so cool, right? He's got the beard and goatee sort of combo, he's still rocking the shades, you can see him down by the beach probably going surfing, and he's like, whoa, who's that radical super guy, right? It's just like, that's my Uncle Franky, isn't he the coolest, right? And so he's hanging out, and the thing that he says is, hey, this island seems a little cold. I'm going to add some heat to it, right? I'm going to warm it up for you guys. So, of course, that's in reference to Karakuri Island and the same thing that Vegapunk was attempting to do, creating that giant heating mechanism on the side of the mountain. He was trying to... What appeared to be what Vegapunk's plan was to take a giant heating element, like a giant metal spike, impale it into the mountain himself, which he succeeded on that front. He made it that far. And then, I guess, to just run electricity through it to heat up the mountain and therefore the entire island. It never worked right, but the people of Karakuri were just so happy that he even attempted to do something like that, that he was like a national hero, until Franky blew up the entire island. Twice, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, but that just goes to show that, like, you know, Franky at age 50, he's still a super guy and everything like that, but maybe after he leaves the Straw Hats, you know, if that ever happens and the Straw Hats disband, which, I'll be honest with you, I kind of see that happening at some point. Maybe not forever, maybe every once in a while they'll get back together and do do some stuff, but I kind of do see the Straw Hats disbanding after their grand adventure, and they all go off to do other things, like Usopp goes back to his village, Nami goes back to Kokoyashi, that kind of stuff. I could see Franky just traveling around the seas and the Grand Line and just stopping at islands and using his technical know-how and his engineering skills in order to make their lives better, right? Also, I don't know if this means anything, but since he's doing the same thing that Vegapunk did, and he's, you know, Franky's at age 50 here, would that also refer to Vegapunk maybe doing the heating mechanism thing when he was 50 years old? And if that's the case, that was already a long time ago, it might give a little bit more belief that maybe Vegapunk is really, really old, like hundreds of years old, and he's augmented his own lifespan using cybernetics or, you know, different kinds of machine technology and his science, mad science, mind you. So Vegapunk could be like a 300-year-old cyborg. I don't think that would really surprise anybody, right? So maybe, because the way they talked about it was, oh yes, Vegapunk back in his youth, he just tried to build a giant heating mechanism on the entire island. Like, how old was Vegapunk when he tried that, right? So yeah, it's just a thing there. So then at age 70, we have Franky in the good timeline. He's a little older now. Now he's like a radically cool grandpa, right? And I love this. His line is just like, hey there, kid. I fixed your bicycle. Added a cannon, though. I love that. So now Franky's just like the old guy in the neighborhood and just like, oh, little Billy, your bicycle broke. We'll take it down to Franky. He's like the town handyman. He'll fix it up for you. And Franky's like, all right, he fixes up the bicycle, but it's like a motorbike that has like a jet booster on the back, and he's just like, fixed it perfect for you. You know, actually, what this version of Franky reminds me of? Okay, so Doctor Who fans out there, any Doctor Who fans? So the last episode with Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, when he was on Trenzalore, right? He basically spends hundreds and hundreds of years in this tiny little farming village, and he's, you know, a Time Lord, so he ages, but he ages slower. So generations and generations of these townsfolk are all going by, and the Doctor is there every single generation, okay? And so he just becomes like this kindly old wise man that's living in the town and just using his vast knowledge to improve their daily lives. So that basically reminds me of Franky in this version. He basically becomes kindly old Matt Smith, who is the greatest Doctor. Actually, okay, no. I hesitate to say that because I really like David Tennant as well. It would be between David Tennant and Matt Smith, but Matt Smith was a pretty damn good Doctor. You have to admit that, all right? But in any case, that was in the dimension where things went well. Now let's look at the dimension where things don't go so well for Franky. Although I would argue, even in the bad dimension, things still kind of work out for Franky. It's just he's not a good person, but it's not like the other Straw Hats, because typically the way Oda depicts the other Straw Hats in the bad dimension is they basically become like recluses and drunks and just hang out in the bar all day, like smoking cigarettes and just drinking booze and just like, life used to be cool, but now it sucks. So in Franky's version of reality, at age 50, I'm assuming this is like, let's say, in the bad reality, I always assume this is what would happen if like all the Straw Hats died, right? Like, let's say all the Straw Hats died except for Franky, and he was the only one that made it out alive. This is how his life would turn out. Same thing with like the way Nami and Robin turned out. That would be like the way they turned out if like all the Straw Hats died and they were on their own, okay? So in this version though, Franky at age 50 has just converted himself into a straight up battle mech. And I like to think that Franky in this reality basically just removed his humanity. So he was just an uncaring, unthinking robot, like a Terminator basically. Not even like a Terminator though, because he actually does resemble a robot on the outside. So maybe if all the Straw Hats were to die horrible, gruesome deaths, and Franky was the only one to make it out alive, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna rebuild myself even stronger, but I don't want any sort of humanity. I don't want this sadness, this guilt anymore. So he just removes all of it, okay? And so he just becomes Battle Franky 50, and he's just this robot mech, and he's just like, I am Franky. I will eliminate all ships in the world. Dismantle! Dismantle! You know, so there's another Doctor Who reference for you today. So, anyway, yeah, that's Franky, basically, just returning to his life as a ship dismantler, but in the coolest, like, anime battle mech Gundam way possible, alright? So, I mean, like I said, it's not a good reality, but it's a cool one, I gotta tell you that much. But it doesn't stop there. Oh no, then we get to Battle Franky 70 at age 70, when he just turns himself into a damn battleship. Like, it's not him piloting the battleship, it's him turning himself into a battleship. Like, he just like, this robotic form is most impractical. Arms, legs, these are the remnants of my humanity. I will become the most super battleship ever. Robo! You know, and so he just turns himself into a battleship, and his figurehead is just like, I am Battle Franky 70, I will annihilate you all. And so that's that. He's going around just Battleship Franky. So yeah, I mean, it sucks that Franky just basically turned himself into an evil Megazord, but I mean, it's badass. I can't say it's not cool, right? It's really cool. All right, well, anyway, that was the stuff with Franky. I love it. That was the most fun I think I've had with all of the, like, the Straw Hats being aged up in the good dimension and bad dimension. That was so great, okay? I want to see this animated. I want to see it animated so bad. Just like a what-if scenario. You know what? I might just do a video about it. You know, it's Christmas time. Why not? Franky's my favorite Straw Hat. I'm just going to do a video on this parallel series of events from just 2 sketches we got in SBS 101, how the world would change if Franky just turned evil, okay? All right, so now we get to the thing that everybody wants to know about, I guess. All right, the thing that everybody was freaking out about at any rate. So, somebody asked a question to Oda talking about Ushimaru Shimotsuki, the samurai that was in the cave alongside Yamato when she was little, after, you know, Kaido throws her in there, as well as the 2 other samurai that were purportedly the other daimyo of Wano. So just to give you an idea on this, on the backstory really quick, we of course had Odin and his scabbards that tried to fight against Kaido 20 years ago. They failed. Odin got executed, all right? And Orochi was the shogun at this point. Kaido was a dragon duck. He took over all of Wano, right? And so, and the scabbards, some of the scabbards got, you know, sent into the future by Toki, and then some of the other scabbards have to lay low in Wano, you know, Nekomamushi and Inuarashi, they go back to Zo, all right? So they're not going to be of any help, all right? Well, there were other daimyo that lived in Wano, other than Odin, of course. You know, you had Yasuie, you had Shimotsuki Ushimaru, and his trusty fox companion Onimaru, and then you also had the daimyos of the Kibi region and the Udon region, who we never met before up until that flashback with Yamato in the cave. So they all rose up to fight against Kaido, and they lost as well. And they probably had, they were really strong in their own right, and plus they probably had armies at their back as well of really strong samurai. But Kaido's forces were simply too powerful, and they were able to be crushed, and then he took Shimotsuki Ushimaru and the other 2 daimyos from Kibi and Udon and threw them in the cave, and then that's where Yamato got to meet them, all right? So the question is, of course, who is this samurai, and also, is Shimotsuki Ushimaru Zoro's father? That's the question that we all want to know about, of course, okay? And unfortunately, I have to say, Oda confirms it right here in this SBS, no. Ushimaru is not Zoro's father. He comes flat out and says it right here, okay? Which does kind of suck, because I'm one for continuity and lore, and I was looking at the timelines and everything, and I'm just like, yeah, no, guys, yeah, this makes sense. You know, Ushimaru could be Zoro's dad. It does make sense. So, unfortunately, that is not the case. Oda kind of goes on to say, he's like, well, they do look kind of similar, don't they? Isn't that interesting? I guess, you know, there could be a story, and Oda also says in the answer, he's like, look, I'm really not going to put this in the manga. I mean, I might, but he even says, like, I'm not even going to reveal these samurais' names in the manga, which is why he does it right here, okay? And so, of course, we know Shimotsuki Ushimaru from Ringo, but the other 2 samurai that were in the cave, we have the short dude that had, like, the triangle head, and his name was, Omusibi Fugetsu, part of the Fugetsu clan, and then the tall dude was the daimyo of the Udon region, and he was Tempura Uzuki, the Uzuki clan. And then tempura, of course, they're all named after various Japanese delicacies, you know, like, for example, you know, Odin, of course, was Odin, sukiyaki. I don't know what, I know what tempura is. I don't know what omusibi is. I didn't actually look that up. I was going to look that up, but then I forgot to, so here's what omusibi is. Anyway, so they're all named after food, right? And so those are the other samurai that were in the cave, but Oda reveals, like, I wasn't really planning on revealing their names in the story or their relevance in the story, and Ushimaru is not Zoro's father. I guess guess he also says, like, well, you know, there's a family resemblance, so there might be a connection still between Zoro and Ryuma, and Ryuma lived like 400 years ago. Like, the similarity is so uncanny. Like, there has to be something. Even if Ushimaru is not Zoro's blood, like, relative, like, well, not maybe blood father, but, like, Ryuma has to be Zoro's, like, distant ancestor, okay? So even if you want to say, like, Ushimaru is Zoro's, like, great uncle or cousin or some other kind of distant relation, I think Oda was just trying to say right here, like, no, we're not gonna get, like, Zoro's parents in that way revealed in Wano. Zoro's parents might have very well have just been some of the, you know, people that left Wano and went to the East Blue, and they were, you know, maybe they were samurai, but they weren't, like, super powerful, they weren't daimyos, they weren't, like, the greatest swordsmen of all time, or great swordsmiths or anything. They were just regular people from Wano that left with Kozaburo, and their descendants even, maybe it wasn't even them, it was like the same thing that happened with Kozaburo. Kozaburo met a woman from the East Blue, and they had Koshiro, and then Koshiro grew up, got married, and had Kushina. Oh no, not Kushina. Kuina! I keep making that mistake! Kushina! Naruto's mom! Kuina! Dead! Well, Kushina's dead too, so that's not a great... Whatever. Anyway, that's what happened with Kozaburo, so maybe it was something similar, where Zoro's parents left Wano, or even one of them, like the mother or the father, and they met somebody in the East, and then they had kids, and then those kids grew up, and then they got married, and then they had Zoro, okay? So that probably honestly makes more sense than Ushimaru being Zoro's dad, but I thought it could work. It also gives the impression that maybe Oda's like, you know what, we just did that whole thing with Sanji and the Germa and his backstory and who his parents were in the last arc. You know, maybe this is Oda just kind of telling us that, like, not all of the Straw Hats are going to have ridiculously powerful, legendary parents, guys. You know, like, you know, Sanji's dad is the king of the Germa Kingdom, Judge. You know, Luffy's dad is Dragon. You know, we don't know anything about Robin's mother, but, Robin's father, but Robin's mother was Olvia, who was very relevant, you know. You know, but maybe Oda's just like, they're not all going to be legendary, guys. You know, they're just, you know, some in the case, they might just have normal parents, and that's the case. I'd still like to know what happened to Zoro's parents. Maybe they died or something, I don't know, in the East, but we just don't know a lot about that. But I still like to think, yeah, there is a relation to Ryuma and Zoro, but it's like a far-flung, distant, you know, relation, right? Just an ancestor, and that's probably what Oda's going to focus on if he focuses on anything at all. He even goes on to say there was a scene where when Onimaru was disguised as Gyukimaru, a lot of Marus in One Piece, there was going to be a scene when Gyukimaru stole the shoe suite from Zoro. He was going to look at Zoro, and Zoro was going to resemble Ushimaru in his youth, and Onimaru was a companion of Ushimaru, and, you know, Onimaru was going to be like, oh, you're Ushimaru, you have returned, you know, he was going to do something like that, but then he decided against it, okay? And I guess that's the reason he decided against it, because then it would get people thinking that, like, Ushimaru was Zoro's, like, blood father. And so that might have been like, you know, I don't want people to think that, and so that's why Oda didn't do that scene there. Something else, though, I do want to bring up that has always bugged the crap out of me with the families of Wano, like the noble families of Wano, as well as the daimyos and the structure of Wano itself. I don't think I've ever brought this up because I've never actually had a chance to sit down and actually lay it all out, but there's some stuff here that doesn't make sense, or there was something that had to have changed even before Orochi took over, okay? Alright, so way back in the day, well before Orochi came to power, well before Kaido arrived in Wano, back when the Kurozumi family was still a noble family, okay? It was said that there were 6 noble families in Wano. The Kozuki family, the Shimotsuki family, the Amasuki family, Toki's family, the Uzuki family, the Fugetsu family, and the Kurozumi family. There were 6, okay? Now, Kurozumi was, you know, removed from that status after Orochi's grandfather attempted to poison and kill all of the daimyo, alright? He failed, but he attempted to do it, alright? Now, at the time when Oden was a daimyo of Kuri, once again, this was before Orochi and before Kaido showed up. This was like 30 years ago when Oden became the daimyo of the Kuri. When he subjugated it, he took it over from this lawless land that was led by Ashura Doji, okay? So at that time, the families and the regions of Wano do not sync up properly. One of the families, I'm assuming the Amasuki family, fell from grace, okay? Here is a map of Wano Kuni, alright? 30 years ago, this is how it shook down. The Kozuki family were the heads of the flower capital. They were the shogunate, all right? That was Sukiyaki. Then, in the Kuri region, we also had a member of the Kozuki family, Odin, who was the daimyo. And then we know Yasuie was the daimyo of Hakumai, Yasuie Shimotsuki, but another member of the Shimotsuki family also was a daimyo, Ushimaru Shimotsuki, who headed up Ringo. And then in this SBS, we find out that the Fugetsu family was in charge of Kibi, and the Uzuki family was in charge of Udon. Okay, well, even if you factor in the Kurozumi families being dejected from the noble status because of the assassination attempt, that leaves the Amasuki family out without any explanation. And I know the Amasuki family was around ever since Toki's time, so you might say, well, that was a long time ago. Maybe it fell from grace at some point there. But no, during the time when Orochi's grandfather was alive, so it was a long time ago. It might have been like 60, 70, 80 years ago from the present storyline, but overall, compared to like the Void Century, it wasn't that long ago. That was when the Amasuki family was still there, and now they're not around anymore, or at least they're not the daimyos anymore. So here's what I think happened, okay? Here's how I think this all shook down. During the time of Orochi's grandfather, when the Kurozumi family was still a daimyo family, the Kurozumi family ruled over Kuri. And the Ringo region was still under the control of the Shimotsukis, but the Hakumai region was under the control of the Amasuki family. And the Kozukis were just the shoguns, all right? They were just the royal families, not nobles, not daimyos, just the shogunate, okay? This is how I think it looked. And then the Kurozumi plot happened, and so then he fell from grace, and so then the Kuri region became a lawless land because there was no daimyo, then their entire family got taken out. So it wasn't like, you know, the Kurozumi clan leader died and another Kurozumi took over. The entire Kurozumi family had their names dragged through the mud. But then something else had to have happened to the Amasuki family why they're not in charge of Hakumai. And the reason I'm picking Hakumai and not Ringo, because they were both led by Shimotsuki, is because Ryuma was from the Ringo region, and his name was Ryuma Shimotsuki, and his grave is in the Ringo region. And I think Ringo might have been the oldest region of Wano, the way it's talked about, and like we see the cemetery and everything like that. So I think it was the Shimotsuki family at the beginning that was the head of the Ringo region, and it was the Amasuki clan that was the head of the Hakumai. And then something happened where maybe the Amasuki family, just like Sukiyaki, like they didn't know Sukiyaki was going to be born, so they thought the Kozuki bloodline was just going to end. Well, maybe it did end with the Amasuki clan, and so something happened where maybe the Amasuki daimyo died, and then their children maybe also died, or they never had children, and the line just ended. And then it was like up to Yasuie, who was a branch of the Shimotsuki family, that were like, okay, I'll take over as the new daimyo of Hakumai. Maybe it was something like that. But that always bugged me because the number of families and the number of regions don't sync up right, okay? So, I know, I kind of went off on a tangent about that, but I didn't really hear anybody else talking about that, so I just wanted to bring it up now. Let me know what you guys think about that. Okay, so that's everything involving Zoro and Ushimaru, or rather lack of a connection between the two, but there you go. Next up, we have Shanks' crew. Remember a bunch of Shanks' crew showed up at Marineford at the War of the Best, and we got different viewpoints, not just Yasop, Lucky Roo, and Ben Beckman, but we also got a bunch of other members, and plus a monkey, that we never got names for. Well, I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that a movie was just announced, One Piece film Red, next year coming out involving Shanks in some way, shape, or form, but Oda has now revealed the names of all of those members at least not every single member of Shanks' crew, but the members that were there during Marineford, okay? So starting with this guy right here, the guy with the long blonde hair, kind of looks like Val Allen from Justice Friends. Remember that? Dexter's Laboratory? I know you do. His name is Lime Juice. Oh, yeah. And then we have this dude, big muscular guy with the monkey, the one the monkey was actually clinging to. The monkey is named Monster, by the way, and this was revealed, I think, way back at the very beginning of One Piece. There was like a little SBS, like, yeah, the monkey is named Monster, but the man is named Bonk Punch. Hey there, my name is Bonk Punch. You know what? Alright, I want you to picture a scene here really quick. Okay. Shanks, for the most part, is a pretty laid-back, chill kind of dude, right? He can get serious. He can fight, and he can, you know, cut somebody in half if he needs to. But for the most part, he's very chill. I want you to imagine that town that Bartolomeo ransacked. You know, they tore down the Red Hair Pirates flag and they're selling Luffy merchandise. I want you to imagine Shanks shows up to that island and he sees everything going on and he sees Bartolomeo kind of taking it over. And so Shanks is there and he's just like, what are you doing to my town? And Bartolomeo kind of gets into Shanks' face and he's just kind of like, oh, look at you, Shanks, one of the Yonko. I'm taking this island in the name of my favorite pirate crew. And then Shanks just looking at him and he's just like, okay. Well, I'm not going to do anything to you, but allow me to introduce to you to my associate, Bonk Punch. And then Bonk Punch is like this 12-foot just hulking behemoth, and he's just like, my name's Bonk Punch. And then Bartolomeo's like, you know, it's just like, Bonk Punch is like the bouncer of the Red Hair Pirates. He's the dude, because they're all based on drinks and alcohol, literally, like lime juice. His name is Lime Juice, alright? You add that to alcohol, okay? My name's Bonk Punch, you know? It's just like, he's the whenever the Red Hair Pirates are pirating on an island or in a bar or whatever, he's the bouncer. He's outside with Monster the monkey, and just like, come on, man, let me in. He's just like, your name is not on the list. Oh, I'm gonna sneak in, and that's when he just pounds him into the ground like a tent pole. All right, that's Bonk Punch. Every crew needs a muscle. Bonk Punch is the muscle of the Red Hair crew. Then we have Monster the monkey. Then we have Building Snake. He's the dude with the long neck and the tattoo and the glasses. I'm assuming he's their shipwright because his name is literally Building Snake. So that's, I'm assuming. Also, the figurehead of the Red Force, their ship, it's sort of like a Viking, you know, longship figurehead. It's like a dragon, but dragons are like snakes. Right? So there you go. Then we have Hongo. And Hongo is just this dude with blonde hair. Doesn't seem all that like, he's the most average looking out of all of them, but his name's Hongo. And then we have Howling Gab. And Howling Gab is like this crazy like ape man, you know, where he's just like sort of like, he looks like if he ate like some kind of like gorilla zone, I could see it, right? He's like this crazy like Tarzan kind of type, right? And I think Howling Gab makes sense for him because like they're drinkers, so they all get drunk, and he's like the very loud, boastful drunk where he pounds a bunch of brews and he's just like, yeah, baby! You know, like that's that kind of guy, right? And then we have Rockstar. Now, Rockstar, so all those people I listed off, except for Rockstar, were officers in the Red Hair crew. The way it shakes down is that Shanks is their chief, he's their captain. Ben Beckman is the first mate, he's the second in command, the vice captain. And then we have Yasop, Lucky Roo, Lime Juice, Bonk Punch, maybe not Monster, Building Snake, Hongo, and Howling Gab are all the officers of the Red Hair crew. And remember, it was revealed by the, when they were talking about the bounties of all of the Yonko, Shanks' bounty has the highest average bounty out of all their crewmates. So I guarantee maybe out of all the officers, which are, let's see here, okay, Yasop, Lucky Roo, Lime Juice, Bonk Punch, Building Snake, 6, Hongo. That's like 7 officers plus Ben Beckman and Shanks. That's 9 people. All of their bounties might in fact be over $1 billion. You know, because we've seen the, you know, the second, not the second in command necessarily, but the commanders of Yonko crews are all like around $1 billion. Like the Sweet Commanders were not quite there. Katakuri was, but Smoothie wasn't, and Cracker wasn't up to $1 billion, but they were getting close. Jack, King, and Queen all have over $1 billion. So maybe it's a thing where it's just like, yeah, Shanks and Ben Beckman, obviously their bounties are well over $1 billion. Shanks is over $4 billion. Ben Beckman's is probably pretty high up there as well. But all of the officers, the 7 officers, they might have over $1 billion plus bounties as well. But anyway, they're the officers. Rockstar is not an officer, he's just a fighter. He was the dude that Shanks first sent to Whitebeard to give him the letter about Blackbeard and Ace and, you know, to try to stop Ace and everything. And Rockstar had a bounty of 94 million. Now that doesn't seem like that impressive, although it's probably gone up since then. But at the time he was introduced, 94 million, this was right when Luffy beat Crocodile and he had 100. Okay, so, you know, that's still a pretty impressive bounty. Now, Whitebeard did not think much of him, and Whitebeard's like, I've never heard of you. But it's Whitebeard. You're comparing Rockstar, a relatively new pirate, to Whitebeard, one of the Yonko that's been around for decades and decades, all right? So obviously he's going to be like, I've never heard of you, you stupid kid, you know? But Oda does go on to say, Rockstar is in fact very strong. It's just he's not an officer, but he is a strong guy. Don't think of him as like the Buggy of the Red Hair crew. He's still a strong guy, right? Okay. Also, we get a reveal, a little doodle of what would have happened if Killer on Kid's crew ate a smile and actually received the power. So Kid is, Killer is basically a pleasure right now, like fa 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 fa, because he ate a failed smile fruit. But then Oda draws what would happen if he ate a successful one, and it reveals that it would have actually have been an elephant smile, kind of like Baba Nuki or Old Maid from the prison. And so his elephant smile, though, would have had his whole body turn into an elephant with his arms with the blades, the Punisher blades, coming out of the side of the elephant. And then at the end of the trunk would be Killer's head, like kind of bobbing around, kind of like Hamlet at the end of the trunk. He's like, "Hi guys, how you doing? Punisher blades." So I'm sure he could have made use of the elephant body, but I think maybe Killer sort of dodged a bullet there. I mean, he ended up as a pleasure and he has to laugh constantly and he doesn't like to. But I think if it's a choice between that or turning into this, yeah, I think Killer, I think it was all going to work out for him, relatively speaking, of course. Okay. There was a few other things, like, standard. There was one question that was like, a fan was asking Oda to, like, separate the sexy SBS questions from the serious SBS questions, and just like, "Oda sensei, you get a lot of sexy questions involving characters' boobs and like their body measurements and stuff. Like, can we just move that to another section? Because I kind of want all the serious stuff to be answered here, you know?" And so Oda's just like, "Good point. No." Just like, he just shoots him down. I just think that's funny. Anyway, though, so we find out the name of Yamato's Kanabo. So Yamato uses a Kanabo much like Kaido, except where Kaido's is spiked, Yamato just has like the blunt kind of... I actually have one that's very similar. Alright, so this is more like Yamato's Kanabo, more of the blunt kind of edges. It'll still mess you up if you get hit by it. Ask Ulti. But this is Yamato's, okay? And so the name of it is Takeru. Takeru, which means leader of a fearless tribe, or a builder, to build something, okay? Which makes sense, given the fact maybe Yamato wants to build, Odin, Odin's dream, to build a better Wano and to open it up and everything. So that makes sense there. Also, Oda does in fact draw Takeru as an actual person, like, the spirit of Takeru, okay? But the interesting part here is that Yamato Takeru was the full name of the 12th Emperor of Japan way back in the day, Yamato Takeru. So it makes sense that that's the name Oda picked for the Kanabo. It's actually an interesting thing, and I want to talk about that now, if you will indulge me on going on a little bit of a tangent here. So anybody that knows about Japanese history, who was the first Emperor of Japan? It's a hard question to answer. It doesn't necessarily have just one answer to that question, because like a lot of civilizations back in the day, especially really, really old ones, there's a parallel here to Egyptian, lore and history I'll get into in a second, but the idea is like the earliest ones that were written down were probably more mythological figures rather than actual emperors or kings that lived. So officially, I guess, when it goes by the Nihon Shoki, which is like the chronicles of the age of Japan, of the early days of Japan, and the Kojiki, which was even before the Nihon Shoki, it was Emperor Jimmu, okay? Which is great, because my mom's boyfriend is named Jim, and when I found out that fact, I was just like, "Hey, Jim, you used to be the emperor, you were the first emperor of Japan." So now, Emperor Jimmu, okay, who was apparently the descendant of Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, and so Jimmu was like the descendant. So you can see where the mythology comes to place. Jimmu could have very well have been based on a real person or multiple people, but it's typically considered, yeah, he's the first emperor of Japan, but also a mythological figure. It was very similar to the way that the history of Egypt was uncovered, where if, because they like to have records of Egypt. When they started having their writing systems and everything in Egypt, they started to write down who their rulers were, except they were very, they believed in gods, and they were very superstitious, because, this was, ancient Egypt. We're talking like 3,000 years ago. Over that, like 5,000 years ago is when Narmer, the first pharaoh that created the first dynasty and unified Upper and Lower Egypt, but even before that. So we're talking about people that didn't actually know who was the first, ruler of Egypt, but they knew their religion. So examples was the very first rulers of Egypt were gods. So if you look into it, like the past and the stones and everything we've recovered, it's like Horus and Osiris and Ra and all the other variations of Ra. Ra has like, there's a billion different versions of the sun god, and it's not just Ra, but like there's like literal gods that were the rulers, the first rulers of Egypt. And then after the gods, there was this group called the Disciples of Horus. And the Disciples of Horus were like demigods that were like part human and then part, you know, representatives of Horus, like avatars. And then finally it starts getting into regular humans, which even before Narmer, it could have been somebody named Irie Hor, and also like other, like I think actually Irie Hor is the first name, like actual written name that we've ever found for a human being in history. Okay, so it's crazy. But like then it starts getting into more fundamental history that they actually knew about and keeping track of the records. Okay, but in order to make their religion make sense, they had to go back and say, oh, the first ruler of Egypt, that was the gods, and then the demigods, and then it finally became us, the humans, that were charged with it. Something similar to Japan, where it was like, oh, the first rulers were Izanagi and Izanami and Amaterasu and, you know, Tsukuyomi and, you know, Susanoo. Like, it had to be those, you know, Izanagi and Izanami created the island, but it was like, that had to be the gods. And then it was like demigods, like Jimmu, who is the descendant of Amaterasu. And then it goes on like that for a long time in the Kojiki until eventually you get to, I can't remember, I think it was like the 14th or 15th emperor down that finally had like, okay, verifiable historical fact that this person was born and died and was a human. And, you know, not to say that all of the emperors back in the day didn't exist. They might have, it's just a lot of their exploits were mixed in mythology. And even with Yamato Takeru, he probably really exists, but then there's also a lot of mythology mixed in where he had like magic swords and shit. Probably didn't really have those. So that's what I mean. Like, but that's why I find history and mythology so fascinating, where it like blends together in the early days of our civilization. I love it so much. All right, so anyway, last question. Sorry for the tangent. I'm sorry. I didn't want to go off on a tangent about that. Okay, so last thing to mention, there was a question like, hey, Oda, do you watch YouTube? Do you watch One Piece YouTubers? Okay, and so Oda goes on to list all of his favorite YouTubers now. Okay, so he says that yes, he is aware of them. I mean, how could he not be, right? But he says like, oh, I've seen them before, but the thing is that he is like, these YouTubers really go crazy when it comes to thinking of all the theories and characters and all the possibilities in One Piece. You know, I've said this before, but it's like, you have all these YouTubers talking about One Piece, the most popular manga in the entire world right now, okay? This shelf right here, all this shelf is One Piece, okay? You have, you know, not just people in the States, but people all over the world talking about One Piece, coming up with theories involving One Piece, you know? Eventually somebody's going to guess it, right? Like, eventually, somewhere, at some point, there is a video on YouTube, I guarantee you right now, could be any of us. Could have been O'Hara's video, could have been the video from YouTubers in Japan or in other countries. Somebody out there has probably guessed what the One Piece is by now. Even if Oda chooses to change it later, it's just like, they might have guessed what it was originally, or figured out the Void Century. Like, it's just, it's kind of that situation like a million monkeys working at a million typewriters. Eventually, they're gonna hammer out the works of Shakespeare, right? So, yeah, I mean, like, somebody probably guessed it, or at least is on that line of thinking to guessing it, right? Somebody has to. It's different from the way that stories were written 50 years ago compared to where they're at right now, right? Like, imagine if there was social media and YouTube and all this stuff back when J.R.R. Tolkien, you know, was writing Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and everything like that. You know, I'm sure somebody would have guessed the ending of it, or what would have happened, or all these great fiction, these stories of fiction and everything like that. But now that we have that, so Otis says that, like, I'm aware of them and I've seen some of it, but I've actually stopped watching them because Oda's afraid that, like, I'm going to see what I was thinking on YouTube and that would maybe dishearten me from writing it. And he says that I'm writing One Piece not necessarily for, like, everybody on YouTube making the theories and everything, but I'm writing One Piece for a broad audience, the casual readers, okay? Casuals. I'm writing it for casuals. So I want it to be something that appeals to everybody, what Oda says. And so it's like, that's what I'm aiming for, okay? The way he's phrasing it, I guess the best way for me to take it is like, you know, he's like, I'm not writing One Piece and trying to like analyze all the different theories people are coming up with and trying to stay ahead of them and trying to come up with different ways to circumvent their expectations. I'm trying to write it for like the broad audience, okay? Which makes sense because that's, you know, that's the goal. You know, you don't write a story just for a select group of people. You write it for everybody so everybody can enjoy it, right? There's people right now that are just getting into One Piece, you know, kids, teens, adults, seniors, everybody's getting into One Piece. It can be appealing to everybody. Plus the Netflix series is coming out soon, so there you go. Yeah, with all that being said, I kind of get where Oda's coming from here, you know? And he obviously Sanada has been mentioned before. I think he might have mentioned another YouTuber. There's some translation things where it's like, oh, is Oda talking about just Japanese YouTube, or is he talking about YouTubers in general from all over the world? Like, you know, me and Roger and Joy Boy and Grand Line Review and all of us, you know, is he talking about all of us? And the idea is, I think he probably saw, like, maybe some stuff from other countries, but also Oda speaks Japanese. He could probably understand a little English, but I don't think he's fluent in English or anything like that, especially watching one of my videos. I mean, I'm all over the place, all right? So good luck trying to, I mean, even people that can follow English probably can't follow me too well, right? There's actually people, I've gotten messages from people that were like, it's like, Tekking, watching your videos made me learn English a little better. I'm just like, no, don't, I am not, no. But anyway, yeah, that's my point. Like, I'm sure he's seen, like, videos from, like, us here maybe in the States, and that would be, like, the ultimate thing of, like, oh my god, like, Oda-sensei even watched, like, if he even clicked on one of my videos, like, I'll be happy for the rest of time. I'm like, I don't even care if he watched all of it. He clicks on one of my videos, he sees, what's with the brick? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna see what this Rogers base guy has going on. You know, just like, even if it's that, it's like, you know what? I don't care, you know, like, that would be enough for me. So, I'll take that as acknowledgement that Oda is at least aware of my existence. In the most insignificant way possible, but whatever, I'll take it, alright? Plus all of us that do this. Everybody at the Reverie, you know, King of Lightning, Sun Patch, you know, Brago, you know, just throw everybody in there, every YouTuber, okay. Anyway, Sensei, there we go. The rest of this video is just me listing off all my colleagues. That's all it is, okay. But anyway, the real question, of course, at the end of the day is, has Oda seen Rustage's nerdcore raps about One Piece? That's the big question, right? Alright, I gotta stop. Alright, thanks for watching the video, everybody. I don't have dinosaur facts for you today, but I just went on, like, Egyptian history facts, so I guess that'll cover it for right now. But yeah, really, really good SBS. Really solid one this time around. We got some good stuff. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking, this will be Barry, signing out. Hold on, let me just do that. Yeah! Oh man, you can't even see it, kind of. I couldn't even see it because it was behind the mic, but I think you saw it. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Signing out.